When does playing a tennis match feel easy? When you're having a good day and your shots are coming off easily, of course. But we all know how often that happens in a year. There's another way that can help apart from your shots, provided you have acquired the ability to hit the ball into the court. Find out more in this video. Our players are back on the tournament circuit this week. Yuri Rodionov lost in the second round of a challenger tournament in France. Slava Belinsky reached the semifinals in Turkey last week, where he lost in straight sets. Unfortunately, he was unable to play this week due to injury and has therefore returned to Vienna. Sebastian Sorga is playing in a future tournament in Poland and is in the quarterfinals as the video is being completed. I went back to Soma Bay again this week. Due to Ramadan, things are moving a little slower in Egypt these days, but we still had a few tasks to complete. But now to the topic of how it feels easier to play a match even when you are not having your best day. First of all, a basic requirement is that you are still able to hit the ball into the court. Of course, not with the quality you would expect or wish for, but on a day like that, you first have to be prepared to make compromises. The next step would be to know what to do when you can't rely too much on the quality of your shots. To do this, it would be good to learn to see a match not just as a simple sequence of shots, but also to apply a certain strategy. In order to implement a strategy, it would of course be good to have one, and ideally one that suits your own abilities and playing style. I have often found that a player's expectations and reality are two different things. And if these basic requirements are not met, then a frustrating result is inevitable. Having a strategy also means being able to read the game. Where are your opponent's weaknesses? How can you use your resources to maximum effect? And very importantly, how well can you predict what your opponent will do next? Many players are so preoccupied with themselves that they find it difficult to realize what is happening on the other side of the court. Your opponent also has to contend with a wide variety of tasks and can also become frustrated at times. It is important to read your opponent's emotions and use them to your advantage. However, this is only possible if you stand on the court with your eyes open and don't just see your own problems. If your opponent also struggles with himself, this can change the picture very positively if you are willing to do so. But it's not just about analyzing your opponent correctly. It's also about correctly assessing your own capabilities on that day, under the conditions against this opponent. In order to assess yourself correctly, it would be ideal not to get caught up in your own emotions, but to evaluate the situation as objectively as possible. In order to then correctly assess what changes in playing style would be required, or whether no changes are actually necessary. Perhaps all it takes is a little more patience, less speed in your strokes, and a greater safety margin to the lines. Or perhaps a lot can be achieved by giving your opponent a few higher contacts, or the opposite, more slice. Whatever solution is needed here also requires the skill to implement it. Therefore, these skills should also be included in practice to learn how to use them correctly in competition. I, for example, was by no means a serve and volley player, But I do remember a few matches that I was able to turn around by switching to serve and volley. Therefore, it would be very important not to limit yourself too much to one concept or playing style, but to work on the possibility of creating surprises, if possible, in a positive sense. Thank you for your interest and see you in the next video.